G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR. Hope that you're all well. Today we are going to answer the question, do we Bont or do we not look to Bont going into 2024? Marcus Bontempelli, the highest averaging scorer from the 2023 season, is now the most expensive starting pick that we can select going into the 2024 season, coming in at over $720,000. Do we look to select him in our 2024 starting squad? It's a big decision, and it's a question that we need to take a bit of a deep dive into. So in this video, I'll take a look at some of the cons and some of the pros to selecting this great man in our side. So sit back for the next 15-20 minutes. Hope you enjoy. Let's go, Marcus Bontempelli. Alrighty, before we get right into it, let's take a quick look at some of his 2023 numbers, a snapshot from Marcus Bontempelli. Now we can see here that the Bonds had a career best season. Many people, including myself, did judge him as the best player in the competition in 2023. I'm not going against my boy Lockie Neal here, but I think the Bont was extremely unlucky. As you mentioned, 724,600 is a pretty high price tag. He's got the round 15 bye. Coming into this year, 28 years old, did play 23 games last year. That 2023 average was the highest in the comp, 129.7. His CBA rate, again, was up on the previous year, well up on the previous year at 81%. Averaged 27.5 disposals, 14.5 contested possessions per game, 7.5 tackles, 19 goals in total, I think, from memory. And currently, with the team picker that's been opened for the last few weeks, the ownership percentage for Marcus Bontempelli is currently sitting at 34.9%. Now, you know that I'm a positive type of bloke. Always look on the bright side of life, but I think we need to rip the Band-Aid off nice and early here. Take a look at some of the cons and discuss some of the reasons why you may not look to Bont this year, because as a starting selection, there are certainly some potential red flags. Now, I've got four main points here that we'll be elaborating on. Obviously, the first con is the price, 724,600. He is, as I've mentioned many times already, the most expensive player in the game. Unfortunately, he did have a bit of a cleanup and had pre-season surgery. Always a massive red flag, particularly when we're paying so much. The next point here, it can hurt your team structure when you're spending so much on an individual player. We'll go through the disadvantages of possibly selecting someone at Bont's price. And the last one I've got there is a little bit of a joke, but in all seriousness, Bevo is a crazy coach. We don't know what this guy's capable of. Will he affect Marcus Bontempelli's performance? That may be a bit of a wait and see. Now, the price is obviously going to be a huge factor here. He's going to set you back over 720k. It's a lot to pay for a player. And what we're going to do now is take a quick look back over the last 3 years at the most expensive players in the game, how their score ended up panning out as an average, and also take a look at how their price tended to fluctuate during that time. So we'll start off by taking a trip down memory lane. We're going back to 2020, where Brodie Grundy was the most expensive player in the game of SuperCoach. In his peak, playing for Collingwood, look at that, the hair flowing. Who would have predicted where he's actually at now? But going back to 2020, 705,900 was his starting price. His price peaked at 717,800. That was in round 2. What do we see here? Well, we look at that blue line. Up until then, averaging 133.4. At this point, if you hadn't started with Grundy, you're probably panicking and looking for a way to jump on. After that, though, we see that 61. And that sent his price into free fall just for a few weeks there. Bang, gets at 147. We start to see a little bit of green. Right at the end there, his price dipped down to 563,200, which was about 150k below his starting price. So in Brodie Grundy's case, had a red hot start to the season. People may have jumped off, you may have been disappointed there, but all in all, his season rank was 6th overall. So was it successful? I'd say not too bad. For a season rank of 6 overall in the comp, I still think that you're going pretty well selecting him in your starting side. On to 2021, where we see another ruckman as the most expensive player in the game. This time, it's Max Gawn with a whopping price tag of $751,400. I've got a couple of little scoring sprees in the boxes here. We can see from 2 to 6, 137, 163, 135, 172, 147. We're talking about potentially panicking not having Grundy before. Tell me you're not panicking if you don't own this man, but magically very similar to Grundy, comes out in round 7 with a 63. But up until that point, this man was averaging 141.2. He'd actually made some money on his starting price by round 6, 756,800. Only a little bit, but it still goes to show that we've already seen with Grundy, these blokes can have a red hot start to the season. As you can see here, down in red, 554,800 as his lowest price point. Again, got a couple of nice scores towards the end of the season and managed to get that up a little bit again. But I did have also 103, 100, 102 and 95. That's where you're able to jump on someone like Max Gawn if he goes on a really slow run like that. But again, a season rank of 4th overall. I'm calling that one a bit of a success. Now, you may disagree when you're looking at how much money he's actually lost there, but I think in this case, when you're looking at your Gawns, your Grundys, that real set and forget setup, particularly in your ruck line where you've only got 2 on-field players, I still think that this was a pretty solid move to start him. On to 2022, where Jack Macrae didn't quite start at the 700k mark, as close as you can get, 699,900. I do have a couple of numbers here in the box. It's his scores from round 1 to 5, 133, 142, 92, 158, 153, for an average of 135.6. And what do we see again? Similar to Gawn, similar to Grundy, we're exactly the same as Gawn and Grundy. These blokes get off to a red hot start. His price peaked, however, at 699,900. It did not go above his original starting price. In saying that, though, it took him all the way until round 22 to get to his lowest price point, being 535,600. So, wasn't a terrific year from Jack Macrae. If you got on him early, you'd be pretty happy. But if you did trade him in, say around round 10, then he would have been pretty disappointed with his output for the rest of the year. But again, on the bright side, a season rank of 6. And we'll finish up by taking a look at Clary's 2023 season. Again, similar to Macrae, just under the 700k mark. Look, how much can we take out of this season with Clary? I'm not too sure, but in the box here, we've got 113, 135, 156, 121 for a 4-round average of 131.3. He actually made a little bit of money on that original starting price, peaking at 705,800 in round 4. You can see where I've got the blue line there. So, up until round 10, before all the drama, this bloke did not get below 650k. Even with that comeback game, round 22, still above that mark, and then only went below round 23 and 24. His lowest price point was 612,100 in round 24 against Sydney. But if we take a look at that season as a whole, or not as a whole, but from rounds 1 to 10, he didn't lose that much coin. When was the ideal time to jump on? Well, I thought it was just before he got injured. That's what I did, but certainly paid the price for waiting too long. If I'd have started with the guy, it wouldn't have hurt as much because I would have been able to take advantage of some of those nice early scores. So looking at the previous starter, it seems like these blokes can get off to a red hot start to the season, but inevitably will end up losing cash at some point in the season. But when we potentially look at some of the pros to the Bontempelli pick, we'll deep dive into how consistent this man is. Now, the next point we're going to take a look at here is the fact that Marcus Bontempelli has had some pre-season surgery. Now, I must admit at the start that I was absolutely spooked by this. I'd pretty much ruled him out. We've just talked about price, and then add in this injury worry. absolutely not for me. There's no way that we can select this bloke. But after speaking with my man Damo on the Footy Mailbag podcast, make sure that you check that out. I will leave a link in the description. He changed my way of thinking about selecting Marcus Bontempelli in regards to this preseason injury. So I'm going to add in a clip now. I'll go for about a minute, and I want you to hear what Damo thinks about Marcus Bontempelli's preseason surgery.
I'm at the other end. I'm starting him.
Oh, I want to hear this. Here we go. I like it.
Yeah, he had preseason surgery, but he was actually in main training going full tilt in that final week before Christmas, before they broke off for Christmas. He's going to be there in all the drills from January, and that's when you really need to take notice of who is and isn't there, because lots of players will come back and they'll go, oh, actually, you might need a knee cleanup, you might need a shoulder cleanup, you need to be in the gym all December. Some players don't get a full December because they've come back and the physios have gone, we want you like this for January. January is when they get these players going, because they've got the preseason games and they've got the season, but they're breaking off for 3-4 weeks for Christmas, where they're probably going to eat all of their mum's turkey for Christmas. So how they are before Christmas break, for me, it's good to take note of, but for me, it's mostly irrelevant.
So I've just heard from Damo. He's not too concerned, and he makes some really good points there, but there's nothing better than actually hearing from the man himself. Here's Marcus Bontempelli speaking about this injury and his surgery on SEN.
Oh, yeah, I better move to ease everyone's tensions or concerns. Just a little ankle clean out. Got through the season and whatnot pretty good. And then just had my break, started to train, just noticed a few little signs, a little bit of swelling. It was staying, I guess a little bit angry post-session. So since coming back from my little off-season trip, we just decided better to act now and avoid pushing it into the pre-season and season, going for a little tidy up. But should still be well and truly on track to get things going once we're back on the 27th of November.
So just a little arthroscope, take out some foreign bodies, yep. I think is the technical term, Field Marshal, and you should be right and ready to go.
That's it. No big concern here. Just, yes, better act sooner rather than later and move past it and get going.
So the next con I've got on the list here is the fact that selecting someone like Bontempelli at that high price has the potential, if you're not careful, to hurt your team structure. If you're all starry-eyed and all in love with the Bont pick and don't take into account his price and how that's going to affect other areas of your field, then this has the potential to do bad things for your side and for your overall structure. Now, this is really important. If selecting the Bont is going to make you starve in other areas of the field and something just doesn't look right, then don't go through with it. If you think you can spend the money better off elsewhere, then absolutely go for it. But just to put something out there, I've seen Zach Fisher in a few sides. It's pretty much as simple as going from someone like a Fisher down to, say, a Jack Billings type, and then that will get you your, say, LDU up to your Bont. Love LDU as a selection, but if you're not really after that breakout type selection that does have some durability issues and you just want to go the absolute king, lock in the best man in the game, the best scorer, most likely best scorer, in my opinion anyway, in the game this year, then that's certainly an option that you could look at. And the final point I've got here is the fact that this bloke is coached by Luke Beveridge. We all know what this bloke's like, and what's he going to do going into the 2024 season? Well, big question marks over someone like a Jack McRae, but surely this absolute nutter could not move Bont around, could he? I'm hoping not. I just don't see his role changing, but in saying that, Bevo, he's capable of what seems like the impossible.
You're an embarrassment.
All right, now that all that negative stuff is out of the way, it's time to take a look at some of the positives. Why should you select Bont in your starting team this year? Let's discuss why you should look to Bont coming into 2024. Now, we can see from the first few clips here that Bont simply wanted it more. Brush soft Pendle, see you later, son. Bit of a hospital ball from Libby here. But who's the man? The Bont running back with the fly. He was the only one that was going to get that. Another real clutch moment here against the Lions in the fourth. And take a look at this. So Mr. Handball follows up, breaks a route tackle. Fiorini injures himself somehow, breaks another route tackle, sets up a teammate. Another example here of setting up a teammate. The delivery from this guy inside 50 was just phenomenal. Hard ball get. Doherty just didn't want that ball. Bont, bullet inside 50. Josh Bruce, the beneficiary this time. See you later package again. The blokes just do not want it when Bont's around. And look at that inside 50 to Norton again. Smother, handball, will get the 1-2. Again, what's the bloke do? Right peg, if you don't mind, inside 50 to Aaron Norton. And take a look at this for an assist inside 50. The bloke gets it at halfback, basically on that 50 metre line, runs close to 2/3 of the field, half the field, inside 50 to Josh Bruce, just like that. And it wasn't just goal assists. Have a look at that on the right peg, was really able to impact the scoreboard. This bloke was phenomenal. Remember this game, massive score against Freo. Look at that big bomb from outside 50. And again, a hard ball get, wins it in the contest, sails through. Just love this man. Look at that, like an absolute gazelle, right on 50, right through the middle there. Again, another hard ball get, shrugs off a tackle, big bomb, looks like that's down in Ballarat. Just absolutely phenomenal. And it's the clutch moments. Look at this, 56 apiece in the third quarter. We know that the Doggies and Cats have been rivals, and talk about clutch, you cannot get more clutch than this. Won the game off his own boot there, this guy. And wow, we just see the superhuman and the absolute amazing. There is no way this should have gone through, but with his season, I'm really not surprised in a way. What an elite player. Now that we've taken a look at some of the Bont's best highlights from 2023, let's discuss the pros to selecting him in your starting side. I'll talk about his super consistency, his high floor, high ceiling, the fact that he's the perfect captain option each and every week. He's a set and forget midfielder. Lock him in at M1 and just enjoy the ride. No trade-in stress. This is a big one. He is the type of player that is so hard to bring in, almost near impossible to bring in at the best of times. All the planets need to align, and if you don't have him in your side, he's the type of bloke that can absolutely destroy your week and potentially destroy your season. And we'll quickly finish off just by mentioning the fact that he has a relatively decent fixture. Now, talk about elite performance and consistency over not just a 1 year period, but a 2 year period. Take a look at these numbers by the great Bont himself. In the past 2 seasons, a total of 45 games, this bad man has scored 100 plus in 41 of those 45 games, which gives him a 91% strike rate of going 100 plus. Now, as we all know, it is super important to be able to nail your captaincy and vice captaincy choices week upon week. And if you're looking for a captain to simply lock in as that perma option, look no further than this man. I'm going to go through some numbers with you and explain why he's the best captaincy option, maybe apart from his teammate, which we'll talk about possibly in another video. But his floor is so high, his ceiling is absolutely through the roof. We're talking triple story, big skyscraper type stuff here. This man can deliver week upon week. Let's have a look at some of these captaincy numbers. There's a big Bont with the captain hat on. We can see, again, we've discussed this, only one score below 100, and that score was an 89. His 5 lowest scores from 2023, obviously that 89, then a 101, 107, and a pair of 112s. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about floors in SuperCoach. This bloke's floor is just so high. And then we go to his ceiling. Now, when it comes to a captaincy option, everyone has a different threshold. I'm normally a 125 plus sort of coach, but let's just say for argument's sake, we'll go 130 plus here. I think that the majority of coaches would be pretty happy to lock in a 130 plus captain score. So Bont had 8 of those himself just last year. 131, 145, 146, 153, couple of 160s, 162, 164, 3 actually up to 169, and then that massive score against Freo, a 182. So that ceiling average, if you add them up, divide by 8, is 156.5. And I've given him a +7 score there. and you'll see why in a little bit. In a nutshell, he's only had the one score below 100. He's had 8 above 130. So in my scoring system that I've just purely made up myself, he's a bit of a +7. But let's have a look at some of the other players that you could select as your captains this year. Let's see how they did last year. Now, I've selected 7 players to focus on here. There are a number of players that I could have gone with, but just as an example, I've gone with a couple of backmen in Sicily and Dacos, some mids in Laird, Butters, Track and Bont. I think some of those blokes will be popular selections, particularly Zach Butters this year. Lots of people starting with him from what I've seen. And we've also thrown in the ruckman in Timmy English. So in the first column here, how many sub-tons did each of these players have? We then look at their floor average. We then take a look at how many 130 plus scores they achieved for the 2023 season. Remember, that is the number I'm looking at for a really decent captaincy score. We then take a look at the ceiling average and then give them a bit of a total score. So when it comes to sub-tons, we had Zach Butters in the red there with 8 in total. So 67 up to a 99. But if you look at that floor average, it actually comes out at an 86. The lowest floor average goes to Nick Dacos. If you include that injury game with a 41, if not, that goes up to an 84. Without that, it's actually James Sicily with a floor average of 81 with 7 in total. We look at someone like Track, only the 3 in total. Floor average is absolutely in the green. According to that data, he's got the best floor with a 96. In saying that though, when you look at the Bont, his overall numbers are in green. Only that one score below 100. So when you compare that to Track, he's got 3. I'm still going with Bont there. That floor average 96 to 89 doesn't concern me too much. So I'm giving Bont number 1 for that. And Tim English as well, super consistent with only the 3 below 100, 88, 90 and 99. 92 as a floor average is absolutely phenomenal. When we go to those 130 plus type scores, well, Track, we saw that he only had 3 below 100. But if we take a look at this, only 4 above 130. He seems to just start at 140, skips the 130s, 141, 148, 159, and 167 for a ceiling average of 154. If you look at Sicily, Dacos, Laird, and Butters, 6s and 7s there, so really not much separating those guys. We do see Dacos, though, with the lowest ceiling average of 142, but 142 at the end of the day is still really great. But then we see the green ceiling average from Bont, 157. 8 times this man went 130 plus, starting at 131. 3 scores in the 160s, 162, 164, 169, and then bang, as we mentioned before, we've gone through these numbers, the big 182. However, the big standout here is Timmy English. This man scored 12 130 plus scores for a ceiling average of 143. It's up there with the lowest with Nick Dacos 142, but at the end of the day, he's getting 12 130 plus scores. That is a-okay. So he's in green for the total there, a +9, 12, take away 3. That's how we get to that. Bont with a +7, as we mentioned. Track with +1. Butters -1. Laird +1. Dacos +2. And Sicily, a duck egg, pretty much even when it comes to that. But that's just some quick captaincy data, and I think it's just super important to lock in someone that's going to be consistent. I don't see a heap of people starting Tim English this year. So for me, Bont has got to be that guy. There is just so much to like. I think another thing this year we need to take into account with the amount of buys, we don't need to start a loop, in my opinion anyway. And I'm usually an advocate for a loop where you can, if it works, where it's sensible. But this year, bit of a different beast with the fixture. I think that the best way is to not start a loop, and that way you've pretty much got to rely more on a consistent captain score. And if you look here, there are some really good options, but apart from English, Bont is certainly the main man to go to. Now, it is always very, very nice to be able to just set and forget an elite Uber option. Marcus Bontempelli is the ultimate mid-set and forget. As we mentioned before, remember when we paid up for these ruckmen in the past, 700k plus? What is wrong with actually locking in a set and forget midfielder. We've talked about how great this bloke is as a captain. We've talked about his consistency. The great thing about starting with Marcus Bontempelli is that you can just lock him in from the start and you don't have to worry about getting the bloke in, because as you can see with our next point, actually being able to trade him in can be an absolute nightmare. So let's have a look at how his price actually fluctuated last year. His lowest price point was $610,500, 29k below his starting price. And in saying that, his starting price was very, very modest, under 640k, paying an extra 80 odd k for him this year. What you'll notice is that his highest price for the year, highest price point, 725,200. That was in round 8. And take a look at that blue line there. I've put that for a reason. It's not just to signify that he got a 182, 122 and a 164 in the 3 weeks preceding that. It's the fact that this man did not go below 650k after round 5. That's just how consistent this man is. We showed you the slide before. 41 out of 45 games, he's hit the 100 plus mark. Rarely do any players do that. You're talking absolute Gary Ablett Jr. peak levels here. The big issue here, and you can see the question on the screen, how on earth do you trade him in? This is a very, very tough trade. If you're waiting for this bloke to absolutely bottom out in price, have a rough couple of weeks, well, I'm sorry to say, but if you look at last year's data, it just didn't happen. Is that to say that it won't happen this year? Absolutely not. It is always such a huge risk when you're paying 700k plus for the one player. We mentioned before in the cons, if it does really stuff around with that structure, then don't go there. But if you are planning on going there, and everybody should be at some stage in the season, I don't think that you can have a serious SuperCoach side without this bloke featuring in it sooner rather than later. So if you're in that boat and you're not starting him, what are you actually going to do? We've said it before, all of the planets really need to align. You need those players that are ready to trade out. And what are we going to pay? Let's just say if it is similar to this and we're looking at 650k at a minimum, you're going to need to make some big sacrifices. Will it get to a point in the season where you have to go, you're almost forced in a position to say, I can't actually trade in Bont because I've got to save some cash. Maybe I'll go with another fallen premium and use that cash elsewhere where I need to upgrade in another area, for example. So it is not as easy as just saying I'll trade him in during the season. It can be a bloody hard job. And the last point I've got there is the fact that the Bont has a really nice buy, in my opinion. Remember, there will be teams that have 2 buys before he has his first one. Obviously has a round 0 buy, doesn't count in SuperCoach. And then his one and only buy for the season, SuperCoach-wise, will be in round 15. So that's my quick thoughts on whether or not you should look to Bont or not to Bont this year. Is he in my current starting side? The answer is yes. I have actually made the move to get this great man into my side, tinkered around with a few things because I'm looking just to set up that captain each and every week. I don't want to be risking, say, someone that can potentially give me a 60, 70 type score. All these little things go such a long way at the end of the day. Hey, you may completely disagree with me and say there's much better value elsewhere. I understand that. I'm not trying to sway you to lock the man in. It is far from an absolute guarantee. A lot of water to go under the bridge, and things could certainly change in my side. But as things currently stand, the Bont will be my perma captain from week to week. And he's also been joined by another bloke who was not in my original starting squad, who I also think is going to be a pretty popular selection next year. But we'll save that for another video in the preseason. That is it for now on the Bont. All the best of luck, guys, with your team selection, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.
My girlfriend, she's Canadian.